Hello and welcome to the World Today, everyone. I'm Richard Nta in Nairobi. Let's begin with our top story. President Xi Jinping has congratulated the 10th summit of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, which opened Saturday in Colombia's capital, Bogota. President Xi says since its establishment, CELAC has been committed to promoting peace, stability, development, and prosperity in the Latin American and Caribbean region, injecting new impetus into the unity, cooperation, and common development of the global South. He says over the past year, China and the countries in the region have worked closely together, advancing the steady implementation of the 5 programs and delivering tangible benefits to the people on both sides. President Xi emphasizes that China will always be a good friend and good partner of Latin American and Caribbean countries and will support them in safeguarding their sovereignty, security, and development interests. He also says China stands ready to work with them to uphold international fairness and justice. The China Development Forum has opened in Beijing this year. This year's gathering comes just 10 days after the end of the 2 sessions where China's 15th five-year plan was officially approved. As the first major global business event since the release of the national blueprint, it provides a timely glimpse into how various stakeholders view the opportunities China may offer. Cao Chufang reports.
Chinese Premier Li Qiang delivered a keynote address at the opening ceremony of the China Development Forum 2026, emphasizing that China will continue to uphold free trade and foster greater communication with its international partners amid rising geopolitical tensions and growing protectionism.
China will continue to embrace free trade, advance high-standard opening up, and work with other countries to enlarge the global economic and trade pie. China's import and export activities constitute fair trade conducted within the framework of rules. China also pays close attention to the concerns of our trading partners and stands ready to work with all parties to promote optimized, balanced, and sound development of trade.
The China Development Forum serves as a key platform for dialogue between Chinese policymakers, global business leaders, international organizations, and leading scholars. This year's gathering carries added significance, as it coincides with the first year of China's 15th five-year plan, a roadmap that prioritizes both steady growth and higher quality development. Li Qiang noted that China's development will not pose a threat to the world, but will instead continue to provide certainties.
The outline of the 15th five-year plan is not only a new blueprint for China's development, but also a new opportunity for the world's development. This opportunity precisely stems from the certainty contained in the 15th five-year plan. 5 years from now, China's total economic output is expected to reach 170 trillion yuan. The economic growth over these 5 years is projected to exceed 30 trillion yuan. This will create even greater space for deepening economic and trade cooperation between China and other countries.
At the 2 sessions concluded just 10 days ago, Chinese policymakers highlighted 4 major areas of opportunity for foreign investors: super large consumer market, the expanding services sector, the innovation ecosystem, and new pace setters of opening up. Many guests attending this year's forum see opportunities precisely in these areas, and their presence here speaks to the confidence they place in China's policy direction.
China's excellently talented developer community is pushing the limits of innovation every day. And we're inspired by the many ways Chinese developers are using technology to build tools that help people learn valuable skills, manage their health, and bring new ideas to life. Together, they represent a powerful engine of growth, and they're an example of the new quality productive forces helping to increase prosperity and opportunity across the country.
You have a lot of good technology partners here that we're working together with to make our vehicles even more intelligent in the field of automated driving and smart cockpit.
We have an opportunity to do so much more for the 180 million people in China who right now live with obesity.
As China enters a new development phase in its 15th five-year plan, officials are signaling a continuity in opening up and a stronger focus on quality growth. And for global businesses, the message here is clear. China is positioning itself not just as a market, but also as a long-term partner in an increasingly uncertain global economy. Cao Chufeng, CGTN, Beijing.
U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to obliterate Iranian power plants if the country fails to fully reopen the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours. His remarks on Saturday come barely a day after he talked about winding down the war. Iran says its Natanz nuclear enrichment facility has been damaged, but no radiation leakage has been reported. Israel has denied involvement. Israel, meanwhile, has released a video showing multiple strikes on a main site of a ballistic missile infrastructure in western Iran, on a research and development facility as well in Tehran, allegedly used to develop nuclear weapons components. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps says it has launched a new wave of strikes targeting locations in northern and central Israel and assets associated with the U.S.'s Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. The IRGC says the attacks follow an earlier engagement with Israeli military aircraft. Israel says Iran has, for the first time, fired long-range missiles, launching two 4,000-kilometer range ballistic missiles at the U.S.-UK military base Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. Iran's Tasnim news agency, quoting a source in the country's military, says the U.S. will face a surprising reaction if it attacks Iran's Karg Island, crucial to 90% of Iran's oil exports. Israel's National Emergency Services says at least 64 people were injured on Saturday night in the southern Israeli city of Arad by a missile fired from Iran. Jonathan Regev has more from Tel Aviv.
Israel and the United States strike more and more in Iran. The Iranians are showing time and time again that they have their capabilities to fire back and hit back. If we look at the 24 hours between Friday night and Saturday night here in Israel, there have been various Iranian missiles fired. Once again, we're speaking of cluster missiles, meaning the big missile with a giant warhead may be intercepted, but smaller warheads make impact in a wide area. And we've seen it a couple of times on Saturday evening in the southern Israeli city of Dimona, where various people were injured, among them a boy which was severely injured and taken to hospital. Earlier in the day, just outside of Tel Aviv, a kindergarten was hit by one of those small warheads, and the damage caused there was substantial. The kindergarten, of course, was closed due to the fact, first and foremost, it's Saturday, and second, all the schools are shut since the beginning of the war, so no casualties there, but heavy damage. And we've seen that Israel is having a serious challenge dealing with these cluster bombs, cluster missiles, and it is something that Israel will have to find some kind of a solution to. Even small barrages from Iran, meaning a one or two missiles, once they divide into smaller warheads, they cause a very big challenge for Israel. At the same time, a lot of Israeli strikes inside Iran. Defense Minister Israel Katz saying on Saturday that Israel will continue to pound Iran and the strikes in the coming week. The United States and Israel clearly hitting Iranian assets. There were even reports that a nuclear facility in the city of Natanz were hit by both the United States and Israel. All that may be true, but once again, Iran proving that even after all those serious hits, it does not seem to be going backwards on anything, and is still able to inflict damage here in Israel and in other countries across the region. Jonathan Regev, CGTN, Tel Aviv.
U.S. President Donald Trump's threat targeting Iran's nuclear power plants contradicts with his earlier message that the U.S. is considering winding down its war on Iran. Owen Fairclough reports from Washington.
Mixed messages from the Trump administration have been one of the defining features of this conflict, and this weekend has been no exception. Just hours after the Trump administration suggested it's ready to deploy double the number of U.S. Marines, some 5,000 troops, to this conflict, US President Donald Trump struck a somewhat different tone, posting on his Truth social network over the weekend. We are getting very close to meeting our objectives as we consider winding our operations down in the Middle East. Nevertheless, the conflict continues with US and Israeli forces striking the Natanz nuclear development site in Iran. This was one of the nuclear development sites disputed by the US and Iran over its intentions that was bombed on the orders of US President Donald Trump last year, assisting Israel in its 12-day conflict with Iran. Iran retaliating again, bombing air bases in the Gulf, including those in the United Arab Emirates and Kuwait. And on the sidelines of all of this, India's Prime Minister and Foreign Minister have been talking to their Iranian counterparts to talk about some kind of path forward for some kind of cessation of hostilities. The message coming from the Iranians that any prerequisite would have to be an immediate cessation of hostilities from the US and Israel. Meanwhile, the attention remains on the Strait of Hormuz, that vital waterway that carries and is now choking so much of the world's oil and gas, with Iran threatening to lay naval mines in the strait to potentially cause huge devastation. Over the weekend, leading Western nations have affirmed some kind of a commitment for trying to help ease commercial traffic, that's oil and gas tankers, through the strait, but crucially stopping short of declaring whether they're ready to send their own warships into the strait to escort those commercial tankers along with the United States. So for now, the US stands on its own. Here's the latest assessment of how things fare in the Strait of Hormuz, according to the US, from Admiral Brad Cooper.
Earlier this week, we dropped multiple 5,000-pound bombs on an underground facility located along Iran's coastline. The Iranian regime used the hardened underground facility to discreetly store anti-ship cruise missiles, mobile missile launchers, and other equipment that presented a dangerous risk to international shipping. We not only took out the facility, but also destroyed intelligence support sites and missile radar relays that were used to monitor ship movements.
If the US is accurate in saying it's depleted Iran's naval resources, military experts still are concerned that Iran has the capacity to send small naval craft, even tiny boats, into the strait to drop naval mines into the water, potentially causing huge devastation. Owen Fairclough, CGTN, Washington.
Well, that is it for this edition of The World Today. I'll be back shortly with more news from the continent in Africa Live. Thanks for watching. The WHO says drone strike on a hospital in Southwestern Sudan killed at least 64 people. The Nigerian security agencies scramble to contain insecurity in the north amid renewed terror attacks. And as the world marks Water Day, Africa's attention turns to the growing pressure on fresh water resources and water shortages. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi, and for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. Coming up in business, Kenya and Uganda hope for a big boost in regional business as leaders commission construction of a new standard gauge railway link. And in sports, Senegal's Football Federation rejects CAF's decision to strip Senegal of the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations title. Once again, a very warm welcome to Africa Live. We begin in Sudan, where a strike on a hospital in El Dain in eastern Darfur has killed at least 64 people and injured 89 others, according to the World Health Organization. Among the dead are 13 children as well as medical staff. The attack on El Dain Teaching Hospital damaged key departments, including maternity, pediatric, and emergency units. The facility is now non-functional. According to Sudanese rights group Emergency Lawyers, the hospital was hit by an army drone strike. The strike is part of Sudan's nearly 3-year conflict between the army and the rapid support forces, where hospitals have repeatedly come under attack. According to the WHO data, more than 2,000 people have been killed in over 200 attacks on healthcare facilities since 2023. Now over to Chad now. The death toll from Wednesday's drone strike in Nta town at the border with Sudan has risen to 20. Another 10 people are receiving treatment in hospital after sustaining injuries, according to the Ministry of Armed Forces, Veteran Affairs, and War Victims. The incident is the latest spillover from the civil war in Sudan. Authorities in Chad have expressed the government's solidarity and condolences to victims, reaffirming commitment to ensuring public safety and strengthening defense measures along the borders. Northern Nigeria is on the edge after a renewed wave of attacks, including suspected suicide bombings targeting public places such as markets and hospitals. At least 20 people have been killed and more than 100 injured in the latest violence in Borno State. As the country prepares for elections next year, concerns are growing about security and voter turnout. Our correspondent Tessa McKenday reports.
Saratu Yohana relocated to just 12 years ago after her community was attacked by Boko Haram insurgents in Borno State. She says her aunt was among those killed in the latest attack.
It's disheartening that up until now, terrorists continue to kill innocent people. I am gradually giving up on the government's capability to handle the situation. It's really painful.
In recent weeks, there have been repeated attacks on civilians, public places and security forces across parts of northern Nigeria. The Nigerian army says the latest explosions in Borno State were carried out by suspected suicide bombers linked to terrorist group Boko Haram. Security analysts say gaps in intelligence are making it harder to prevent such attacks.
Focus is missing where our security apparatus is concerned. They do not focus. The biggest weapon of an insurgent is surprise. So we are always taken unawares. They would have known that these people will reintroduce that fear when we unexpected. There's every possibility that this will want to make certain places ungovernable. So let's not remove political influence in it.
In a separate incident last week, around 20 security personnel and local vigilantes were killed during a patrol in Plateau State. The Kanam Development Association says among those killed were 2 military officers, while others were personnel from other security agencies and members of the vigilante. Security analysts warn the violence is spreading fear across communities and could discourage people from voting in next year's elections. They say the government needs to strengthen intelligence and step up operations to contain the threat.
They need to overwhelm these people. Certain locations are becoming ghost towns, so the negative effect is much. It has economic devastation, we know, where farming is concerned. A lot of a lot of farmers will not be able to go to the farm. You know, we are also losing some good, well-trained security men.
President Bola Tinubu has ordered security chiefs to relocate to Borno State and coordinate operations from there. Borno State Governor Babagana Zulum has visited survivors in hospital and pledged to cover their medical bills as well as support families of those killed. For Sarah to Johanna, the hope is that these efforts will finally bring lasting peace. Tessim Akendi, CGTN Jos, Nigeria.
The U.S. military says it deployed multiple MQ-9 Reaper drones and approximately 200 troops to Nigeria to support the fight against militant groups. Officials from the two countries said the troops are not integrated within Nigerian units on the front line, and the drones are collecting intelligence and not carrying out airstrikes. However, the deployment signals the U.S. getting back involved in tackling Islamic State and al-Qaeda-linked insurgencies that are spreading across West Africa. Rwanda's military deployment in northern Mozambique has been widely credited with restoring stability in a region once gripped by insurgency. But recent U.S. sanctions targeting Rwanda's military leadership are raising fresh questions about the future of that mission. As Ethan Tashobia reports, the strikes go beyond security, touching on global energy markets and the lives of thousands on the ground.
In December 2023, a group of journalists, including CGTN crew, was embedded with the Rwanda Defense Force in Cabo Delgado province, offering a rare first-hand look at combat operations and stabilization efforts in one of Africa's most volatile regions. Among them, security analyst Albert Ruda, who has closely followed the mission. Rwanda first deployed troops to Mozambique in July 2021, helping push insurgents linked to ISIL and restore state authority. Since then, militants have been driven deep into Katupa forest, some crossing in the neighboring countries, and normalcy has gradually returned. Businesses have reopened. Coastal areas once under insurgent control are now secured by the Rwanda Special Forces. Ruda Timburwa recounts what he saw in Mozambique.
These people have so much joy to be back in their places, and they have their life coming back. They never even thought. I mean, when I was there, they didn't even think that it was possible, and they were. So it's for them. It's like a miracle.
In Cabo Delgado, multi-billion-dollar energy projects once halted by insurgency are back on track. International giants like Total Energies and ExxonMobil have resumed operations, betting on improved security. For locals who spoke to us then, the biggest change is simpler. Life had returned.
Rwanda forces are very good. We are living safely, but we worry what will happen when they leave.
But now new uncertainty looms. Recent sanctions by the United States targeting Rwanda's military over tensions elsewhere in the region could complicate operations in Mozambique.
So for the population on the ground, and what has happened ever since RDF has been operating there is they've restored peace and security. People are back in their lives. You know, for them to have to fear to go back into displacement or to become again refugee, it would be another tragedy.
Ruda Timburwa emphasizes that the region is strategically critical, not just for Mozambique, but for global energy supply. With instability in the Middle East affecting production, Cabo Delgado's liquefied natural gas projects are increasingly vital.
What has happened in Mozambique is not just for the populations, but also for main investors, because it's a part where they extract gas, LNG, and you have French and US actually interest there because it is Total and ExxonMobil that are extracting there. So in these times, in these days that we know with what is going on in the Middle East, I think it's maybe definitely the wrong time to have that part interrupted.
On the ground, Rwandan officials insist their mission remains unchanged. Even as recent as last week, a joint contingent of RDF and Rwanda National Police officers departed for Cabo Delgado, Mozambique, to relieve their colleagues currently deployed on the mission.
Our exit plan, our stay is not time-specific, it is mission-specific. We are right now in the final stage of operations that we set out to do, which is security sector reform. We are training, we are capacitating the forces, the Mozambican forces, along with the EU. So we have, trained the first cohort of the Mozambican forces who graduated recently in Rwanda. So the process will continue. And once we are satisfied that we have sufficiently, capacitated their forces to be able to operate in our absence, then we'll exit.
However, the situation could shift. Foreign Affairs Minister Olivier Nduhungirehe says Rwanda will withdraw its troops earlier than planned from Cabo Delgado province if sustainable funding is not secured. The European Peace Facility partly finances the deployment, with about 20 million euros disbursed so far. Government spokesperson Yolande Makoro says the actual cost to Rwanda is at least 10 times higher. She adds the mission has also come with ultimate price, the loss of soldiers' lives, all in a bid to stabilize the region. But analysts warn a premature withdrawal amid U.S. sanctions on Rwanda Defense Force could reverse hard-won gains. Here in Kigali, officials are trading carefully, making calculated moves, balancing international pressure with commitments on the ground in Mozambique, while avoiding any signals that could embolden terrorist groups. Analysts say Rwanda is unlikely to make abrupt decisions, instead opting for diplomacy, maintaining its security role while engaging partners to prevent disruptions that could destabilize the region once again. Richard Nta for CGTN, Kigali, Rwanda.
Time now for a short break. We shall reset and return with more Africa Live. Here's what's ahead. Coming up, as the world marks Water Day, Africa's attention turns to the growing pressure on freshwater resources and water shortages. Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for staying with us. As the world marks World Water Day today, attention is turning to the growing pressure on freshwater resources and the people most affected by these shortages. In Ghana's capital, Accra, many women running small urban businesses rely on a steady water supply to earn a living. But in some neighborhoods, shortages are forcing them to find costly alternatives. CGTN's Nabil Akman Rafai reports.
Grace Obin has been running this salon in Kwabenya, a suburb of Accra, for 15 years. She says erratic water supply is taking its toll on her business.
We need constant supply of water for our operations, but water hasn't been flowing in our taps for several months now. We are losing customers as a result.
In Accra, nearly all residents have access to some form of drinking water, but for many, that doesn't mean water flows from the tap. Only about 35% of households rely on pipe-borne water as their main source.
In the urban areas, there are so many developing areas which don't have the access to this very vital resource. Apart from prioritization, it also goes with investment. Because that which you prioritize, you put money into it. And so we haven't invested enough. I mean, until recently, urban water supply has been very donor-driven. Because if you don't get the loans or concessionary loans or those grants, it was always difficult for government to be able to finance that.
When taps run dry, business owners and many residents in Accra are often forced to buy water from private suppliers at significantly higher prices. Officials at Ghana Water Company Limited say the challenges are linked to rapid urban growth, aging infrastructure, and rising demand in the capital. Residents in this community say access to water can be unpredictable. For many women running small businesses like this salon behind me, a reliable water supply isn't just convenience. It's essential for keeping their businesses open and their incomes stable. Globally, more than 2 billion people still lack safely managed drinking water services. Experts say the situation continues to impact women and girls disproportionately.
It affects their health, it affects their household income. They can't take care of their children, they can't contribute to household income.
As cities continue to expand, experts want authorities to invest in making water supply more accessible, not only for households, but also for the livelihoods of women whose businesses depend on it. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
Meanwhile, Africa's richest city, Johannesburg, is edging closer to a day zero, the critical point when the city's water supply is depleted. Residents in the city have been grappling with intermittent water supply as an aging network begins to buckle under pressure. It raises serious questions about Africa's ambitious plans to secure water systems that can sustain economic growth and the well-being of its population. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
Johannesburg, the continent's richest city, once at the heart of South Africa's gold rush, is now facing an unprecedented water crisis. Not because of drought or supply shortages, but rather failing infrastructure and weak governance.
When we're dealing with the outages that we're seeing right now, it's because the system is completely strained, it's fragile, and it cannot deal with the demand. The growing population. We've seen a deterioration in our infrastructure, and it also then requires a lot more funding to fix.
Shortages once confined to the margins of the city have spread into financial districts, cutting off taps in rapidly expanding middle-class suburbs where development has outpaced infrastructure and maintenance. Uzai Paruk, a resident of Midrand, says the situation is distressing.
Living without water really and truly is a struggle. You know, with electricity, as we know in South Africa, we have load shedding. We've adjusted, we've figured out ways to adapt. And without water, our lives kind of stop.
High consumption is also being blamed for constrained supply, but deep inequalities rooted in apartheid remain.
We've got areas that are very, very wealthy, that have swimming pools, 3 bathrooms, each bedroom has one. You know, there's all of those kind of things. And then you've got this growing poor population that cannot even afford to pay their bills, that you are claiming are using the same amount of water as the wealthier areas. That's not fair.
Significant volumes of water are also lost to leaks and theft.
You could probably cut it down to about 15% of the amount of water, because pipes are always going to leak. But we could probably cut it easily if we replaced pipes and people fixed their internal plumbing as well, because a lot of leaks occur internally in houses as well.
Nearly $4 billion is needed to resolve the city's water crisis. So far, just $44 million has been allocated by the provincial legislature to begin upgrading the network.
Water storage facilities are the future, so that when we are hit by this kind of explosion, the water storage will continue to provide water in our province. For now, we are planning at least to have water storage that can carry us for almost 7 days. But in Midrand, we are building a new water storage facility to house 20 million litres of water.
Africa's bold vision is to turn water security into a driver of development by 2063. But in Johannesburg, the engine of South Africa's economy, that vision is being undermined by crumbling infrastructure and delayed reform. Without urgent intervention, the taps in Africa's richest city may run dry with far-reaching consequences for growth, investment and daily life. Judy Shire, CGTN.
Time now for our business segment. Let's take a look at those headlines. Coming up in business, Kenya and Uganda hope for a big boost in regional business as leaders commission construction of new standard gauge railway link. Welcome into the world of money, our business segment. Kenyan President William Ruto and his Ugandan counterpart Yoweri Museveni have jointly commissioned an extension of the standard gauge railway that will link the two countries. Ruto and Museveni met in Kisumu on the Kenyan side of the shared border to mark the groundbreaking. It comes a day after Ruto commissioned the construction of a section of the SGR between the Kenyan cities of Naivasha and Kisumu. The original line connecting the port city of Mombasa to cities further inland was completed in 2017. The new phase commissioned Saturday will stretch over 100 kilometers from Kisumu to Malaba on the border with Uganda, which is also preparing to extend the line further to its capital city, Kampala.
Your Excellency, this is a very proud moment for us as Kenya as we see this infrastructural development that is not just a rail, it is a commercial lifeline, it is a logistics hub, and it is a regional investment that is going to transform the business environment, is going to transform the fortunes of our farmers, of our producers, of our industrialists, of our business people, and create wealth in our region.
Our plan is to transfer all heavy cargo to the railway, then transfer all the petroleum products to the pipeline. The railway can combine also water transport. This now leaves the roads for passengers and light cargo.
CGTN's Daniel Arab Moore has more on the potential of the railway extension.
On May 31st, 2017, the standard gauge railway commuter train embarked on its maiden voyage from Kenya's coastal city of Mombasa, beginning a 472-kilometer journey to the capital, Nairobi. Today, nearly 8 years later, the commuter train is ferrying millions of passengers annually across one of the country's busiest transport corridors. In 2025, revenue from passenger traffic alone stood at $37.1 million, and the cargo volume had shot up to 7.48 million tons, generating $128.7 million for the railway service. And in recent months, strong demand for passenger services has prompted the railway service to add extra trains in order to meet the growing demand.
It's really amazing because you feel like in a plane and it's very, very comfortable. Again, you're able to go watching the nature, watching the animals. It was really, really good.
And I think it's about time, after 100 years, that we finally got another railway that works, and not only works well, but works in a spectacular way.
Officials say the shift to rail has eased road congestion by reducing bulk cargo on major highways, cutting costs, saving time and improving safety. The new 369-kilometer extension will stretch from Naivasha to Busia on the Uganda border, traversing 8 counties, including Narok, Bomet, Kericho and Kisumu. The project design includes 13 tunnels, 23 bridges and 376 culverts. Uganda is preparing to extend the line from the border to its capital Kampala, with the possibility of pushing it on further into neighboring Rwanda. Once it's completed, It's expected to significantly boost trade volume in the region, and that's a big development for Uganda. In the first 6 months of 2025, the landlocked country received nearly 70% of the 7.37 million tons of cargo transiting through the Kenyan port of Mombasa. However, without an efficient railway line, it can take up to 80 hours to move cargo from Mombasa to the Ugandan border and over 100 hours to Kampala. Daniel Arap Moi, CGTN.
Egypt's petroleum ministry says the country will clear $1.3 billion in arrears to international oil companies by June, speeding up its repayment plan. The North African country had built up $6.1 billion in arrears by mid-2024, largely due to a prolonged foreign currency shortage that delayed payments and hurt investment in gas output. Although conditions have improved, some firms report that arrears are rising again. Under the previous plan announced in January, Egypt still expected to owe $1.2 billion by June. Paying down this debt could encourage foreign companies to resume drilling, helping reverse declining local production and reduce reliance on energy imports. Egypt's energy import bill has more than doubled since the start of the U.S.-Israeli war with Iran. China's pharmaceutical market is growing global attention as top industry figures met with Commerce Minister Wang Wentao in Beijing. The head of the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America and China are now one of the world's fastest evolving markets, with multinational companies expanding their presence. Li Shuang reports.
A high-level dialogue in Beijing bring together global pharmaceutical leaders and Chinese policymakers.
The pharmaceutical industry is vital to human health. We welcome your views and suggestions on development in China.
China is signaling openness and inviting deeper engagement from multinational companies who are already investing in the country.
For the innovative biopharmaceutical sector, China has become one of the world's largest and fastest evolving markets, playing an increasingly global role.
From cutting-edge biotech to large-scale manufacturing, global firms say China's appeal lies in its unique combination of scale and capability.
Key factors in this evolution include China's large patient population, scientific talent, clinical research capacity, and investments in science and healthcare.
And that investment momentum is building. Since the start of this year, major multinational players have announced new expansion plans, including AstraZeneca, Eli Lilly, and Haleon. China's 15th five-year plan also places pharmaceutical innovation front and center. For global drug makers, China remains a critical partner in shaping the future of healthcare. Li Shuang, CGTN, Beijing.
From subway station security checks to community patrols and nursing home care, embodied AI robots are making their way from labs into real-world applications across various sectors. Just how skilled are these robots? CGTN's Bradley Blankenship takes a closer look.
Facing the reality of over 320 million seniors and a growing shortage of senior care workers, facilities across China are accelerating the rollout of smart health solutions. Smart care robots are now offering seniors an intelligent, professional, and round-the-clock care experience. At a smart care robot facility at the Beijing Economic Technological Development Area, moxibustion and exoskeleton robots provide therapy and rehab training, while chess-playing and tea-making robots add a touch of fun to the senior's daily routine.
Unlike traditional daycare centers, we've integrated basic services, age-friendly modifications, and robot-assisted care into one seamless system.
At a community nursing home in Hangzhou's Xihu district, most residents are advanced in age, with many suffering from cognitive impairments. 70% require round-the-clock care. This year, as Hangzhou accelerates the rollout of smart robotic care services, some communities have begun introducing care robots that assist with daily care. If the system detects an incident, like a fall, it immediately alerts nursing staff.
The seniors really love these robots. Every morning, the robot leads them through exercise routines. Having a robot around brings them a sense of novelty and joy.
Old people fear loneliness the most. They also worry about not being able to manage certain tasks. That's why robots like these hold so much potential. The robot can monitor our blood pressure and even track our heart condition. It gives us real-time updates.
In February this year, Qingdao launched the country's first embodied care robot training center where robots are trained in real-world scenarios. In nursing homes across Shenzhen, Chengdu, Wuxi, and beyond, robotic caregivers now make the rounds 24/7, detecting risks and alerting doctors the moment something happens. From daily care and safety monitoring to rehab support and emotional companionship, smart care robots are redefining the lifestyle of China's seniors with multi-dimensional, heartfelt service. Bradley Blankenship, CGTN.
Time now for our sports segment. Here are the headlines. Coming up in sports, Senegal's Football Federation rejects CAF's decision to strip Senegal of the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations title. Welcome into Sport on Africa Live with me, Richard Nta. Let's talk a bit of football. Senegal has vowed to defend its Africa Cup of Nations victory and take the matter to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Earlier this week, the Confederation of African Football overturned Senegal's 2025 AFCON Finals victory, awarding the title to Morocco. The Senegalese Football Federation insists they are the legitimate winners of the title, having won it fair and square on the pitch. CGTN's Sadiq Saban kicks off our show tonight with this report.
Days after